Hey everyone, Jane back with the start of a special series this week. I get a lot of questions about following symbol charts. I use them with all my granny squares and include them in all my full pattern versions in my shop. So I've decided to do a step-by-step walkthrough of one of my more popular squares, Willow, but this time we'll be following the symbol chart. Symbol charts are my go-to. In fact, once I've created a new square, my first step is to chart it, and from there, I write up the instructions. I'm a really visual person and I love lots of visual aids, so pictures, diagrams, that kind of stuff. The symbol chart for me is like a map of the square. The written instructions are good for indicating repeats and if there's specific stitches to work into. It gives you the bird's eye view of how the stitches and rounds all fit together. And like a map, it helps you see where you are in relation to the rest of the square. The symbols are a bit like their own language, but once you pick them up, the chart can be much easier to read than the written pattern and a great quick visual guide to keep you on track. And I've left information in the description below on how you can get a printable version of this chart so that you can follow along as I explain the symbols and as we work through the square. This series will be broken up into a few videos, starting with an explanation of the symbols themselves, and then working a few rounds at a time. This way I can explain the symbols as we use them. It also will give you the information in bite-sized pieces. As with any new language, it can be a lot to take in at once. Today, I'll go over the symbols and how they relate to each other. This video is a good one to bookmark so you can come back to it throughout the series to familiarize yourself with the symbols. So the symbols I'm going to show you today are only the ones we'll be using in this specific chart for Willow. There are many more symbols and many combinations of them out there, but let's stick to just this square for now. You can find more information about this square in the description below. I'll put a link to the written instructions and I'll also put a link on how you can get the symbol chart for this square as well. So the layout of the chart in the round is set round on top of round, working its way from the center outward, just like the granny square itself. It's a symbolic representation of the granny square in every way. In fact, if you hold them beside each other, you'll see the resemblance, or at least once you get the hang of the symbols, you will. Each round has a round number, and this will be the place to start each round. To help visualize, the symbols themselves are often alternate colors set out by round, say with one being black, as in this case, and the alternate rounds being in red. This helps you distinguish which stitch belongs to which round and helps your eye find the proper round that you're on. Some designers work their chart symbols in the color of the yarn that they're using. I like to do my colorways keeping the color in the background and the symbol rounds still alternating between black and red or black and gray. This way, if two adjacent rounds have the same color, the symbols are still differentiated by round and you know which round each symbol belongs to. I find the background color on my symbol charts a really good reference to see what color I'll be using next and where I am on the square itself. So before we get to working on the square, we'll spend this lesson getting familiar with the symbols. Each square starts with a foundation. This will either come in the form of a magic ring, which is what I use mostly. This is represented by the large solid circle placed directly in the center of the chart. The other option is a chain foundation ring, such as this 4 chain, which is slip stitched into a ring shape. It can be any number of chains that you need. In our Willow chart, we'll be using the magic ring, which is the solid round circle. Next, we usually have a beginning chain. So this can be of various sizes depending on the stitches we'll be using in that round. A regular single crochet round will just start with a chain 1, which is an upright oval such as this. It does not count as a stitch, it just sets up the single crochet stitch. A beginning chain 2 is used when the round starts with a half double crochet stitch, and it counts as the first half double crochet stitch of the round. Likewise, a beginning chain 3 is used when the round starts with a double crochet stitch, and it counts as the first double crochet stitch. So you can see that the number of chains pertains to the height of the stitch. So finally, a beginning chain 4 is used when the round starts with treble crochet stitches, which is the tallest stitch we'll be dealing with, and it counts as the first treble crochet. So when I say it counts as a stitch, it means that in your stitch count, that beginning chain counts as one full stitch. Next, we want to look at the stitches themselves, and these are going to become very familiar to you. They are the symbol you're going to see the most of. First, we have the single crochet stitch, which is a plus sign or a small cross. This is a basic single crochet stitch. Then we move on to the T shape, which is the form for a number of stitches. The basic T shape is a half double crochet stitch. The double crochet stitch is also a T shape, but with a slanted cross stick on the stem. The length of the T can be slightly longer as the stitch itself is slightly higher than the half double crochet. And then we also have the treble crochet, again another T. So this has 2 additional slanted cross sticks on the stem, and the stem itself is again probably slightly longer than the last one because the stitch itself is a little bit higher. The stems may vary depending on where they fall in the chart. So the stems will be the length they need to reach the symbol in the round below that they're working into. So they're more dependent on what's happening in the chart. But the important part to look at is the number of cross sticks on the stem. So now we move on to chain spaces. These are different than beginning chains in that these stitches create the holes around the piece that give it space and detail. These ovals will lie on their side. And again, are pretty self-explanatory as far as chain 1 is 1, chain 2 is 2, so chain 3 is 3, and they're usually lying flat, but they can also be arced. In the case of a corner chain space, such as this chain 3 corner space, they arc around a corner shape. So the chains can be shaped, they can be flat, but what you're looking at is the number of ovals attached to each other. Finally, we have a few important symbols left. First is the solid circle. This one's filled in, and this represents a slip stitch. You'll find it at the end of every round because you are joining every round with a slip stitch. So if you started with a beginning chain 3, say, then the dot will be in between your last stitch and the third chain of that beginning chain 3, indicating that you will slip stitch into that third chain. Each round usually has a number to help you find where you are on the chart. These are often just a number with a circle around it, and they can be found at the beginning point of each round. They're also very helpful for you to find out where you're starting the next round. And lastly, I have a combination symbol that is used in our willow chart. There are many of these, and sometimes you'll have to break them down to determine what's being asked. There'll be mixes of chain stitches and regular stitches put together, and then you'll know what they are. But this one in particular looks a little different. It is an actual single crochet chain 2 single crochet that's worked into a corner. The single crochets are slanted together to form a V, and their little cross sticks are a little shorter because otherwise it would get all jammed up and hard to read. So because the single crochets are so short, this is actually a short form for working 2 single crochets into the same stitch, and the chain 2 creates that corner. So that was a lot of symbols to take in, but that addresses all the symbols that we'll be using in the willow chart. Now that you're familiar with them, we can get going on our square. So don't worry, I'll be calling them by name as we come across them and giving you a little more explanation as we use them. So you'll be getting used to seeing them, and before you know it, you'll be reading the charts like a pro. So that is all for this lesson. I think that's a lot of information to take in. And the next lesson, we'll get working on our willow square. So thanks so much for joining me today. Remember, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified of all new tutorials as they come out. Enjoy, and I'll catch you in the next crochet tutorial.